During the dark days of World War II, countless Soviet women were captured, enslaved, and forced into unbearable labor by occupying forces. In towns and villages across the occupied territories, life became a nightmare dominated by fear, humiliation, and constant threat of death. These women, often barely out of adolescence, faced a daily reality that tested not only their bodies but the very limits of their spirit. Their stories, though largely forgotten, reveal the true horrors of war through the eyes of its most vulnerable victims. Women were forced to work long hours, often from dawn until dusk, under the watchful eyes of armed soldiers. They cleared rubble, transported heavy materials, rebuilt destroyed infrastructure, all while constantly threatened with rifles aimed at their backs. One false move, one moment of hesitation, could mean a beating or death. Witnesses describe scenes of women trembling, faces pale and streaked with dirt and tears, muscles straining under unbearable weight, while soldiers shouted commands and laughed cruelly. There was no respite, no mercy, and no recognition of their humanity. The terror was not only physical. Psychological abuse was systematic. Women were humiliated publicly, forced to perform degrading acts, insulted for the smallest perceived mistakes. Soldiers would mock their efforts, point weapons at them as a show of power, and sometimes choose a victim to punish in front of the others, instilling a constant, paralyzing fear. Every glance, every word, every movement could trigger violence, leaving the women in a perpetual state of dread. Accounts from survivors describe how women were made to kneel for hours, carrying supplies with trembling arms, sometimes while soldiers fired bullets into the air, laughing as the women flinched and fell to the ground. Others were forced to work under scorching sun or freezing winds, with little food or water, enduring exhaustion that made their bodies fail. The sounds of shouting, "Log," hing as the women flinched and fell to the ground. Others were forced to work under scorching sun or freezing winds, with little food or water, enduring exhaustion that made their bodies fail. The sounds of shouting, laughter, and gunfire echoed through ruined streets, creating an atmosphere of relentless horror. No one could escape and no one could intervene. Some women were beaten for speaking out or attempting to rest. Scarred hands, bruised faces, and broken bones became part of everyday life. Yet the labor had to continue. Soldiers often forced them to move faster, to carry heavier loads, or to perform work that was impossible for their weakened bodies. Witnesses recount how exhaustion and fear blurred the line between life and death, leaving women trapped in a cycle of pain and despair. The women's psychological torment was relentless. Soldiers would make them witness the suffering of others, sometimes punishing one woman in front of the group to ensure obedience. The constant threat of violence, combined with hunger and fatigue, caused many to experience hallucinations, panic, and terror. Letters and secret diaries that survived the war reveal nights spent trembling, haunted by memories of cruelty, wondering if they would live to see another day. Despite the extreme suffering, many women showed remarkable resilience. They found small ways to resist, whispering messages of hope to one another, sharing meager food, or helping each other survive the physical demands of forced labor. Their courage often went unnoticed in official histories, yet it was these small acts that preserved a fragment of humanity amid unimaginable horrors. The work they were forced to perform often involved rebuilding destroyed towns, transporting rubble, and constructing fortifications, all under armed supervision. Every motion had to be exact. Any perceived error could lead to a brutal punishment. Soldiers would sometimes deliberately create impossible tasks, laughing as the women struggled, deriving cruel amusement from their exhaustion and pain. These moments were not only physically draining but emotionally scarring, leaving lasting trauma for those who survived. Food and water were scarce. Women were given minimal rations, often barely enough to sustain life. Starvation added another layer of horror to their labor. Bodies weakened by hunger struggled to perform the tasks demanded by armed overseers, who reacted with violence to every falter. Yet despite these unbearable conditions, the women persevered, driven by sheer will to survive and the faint hope of liberation. The destruction around them mirrored the chaos of their lives. Ruined buildings, streets filled with debris, and the constant presence of armed soldiers created a world where every day was a fight to stay alive. Sounds of gunfire, distant explosions, and the cries of the suffering punctuated the background, making every step forward a test of courage. The visual and auditory environment reinforced the fear and helplessness imposed upon them. Survivors recount the mental toll of this relentless oppression. They lived with constant fear, unable to rest even for moments. Many suffered from long-term psychological trauma, with nightmares, flashbacks, and anxiety persisting for decades after the war ended. The horror they endured was not only in the physical labor but in the constant awareness of their vulnerability, the arbitrariness of punishment, and the cruelty of those who wielded power over them. Despite the overwhelming adversity, these women endured, displaying resilience that history often overlooks. Their stories are a testament to human strength, perseverance, and the will to survive under conditions designed to break both body and spirit. Each act of endurance, each small gesture of mutual support, became an act of defiance against the cruelty that surrounded them. The suffering of these women reflects a broader reality of war: the systematic exploitation, abuse, and psychological torment inflicted upon civilians. These experiences, recorded in personal diaries, witness accounts, and fragmentary documents, reveal a level of cruelty that is hard to comprehend, yet is essential to remember. They are reminders that war's horrors are not confined to battlefields, but extend into the lives of those caught in its wake. By understanding the plight of these women, we gain insight into the human cost of occupation and oppression. Their endurance, fear, and courage highlight both the depth of human cruelty and the extraordinary capacity to survive. Remembering their stories ensures that these atrocities are not forgotten, serving as a somber testament to the resilience of the human spirit in the face of unimaginable suffering. The legacy of these women is one of both horror and heroism. They endured forced labor, humiliation, starvation, and violence, yet many survived to bear witness. Their stories, though often untold, continue to resonate, providing lessons about the consequences of unchecked power.